One cold morning, Jenna found what she thought was a shivering puppy in her backyard. Concerned for her well-being, she ran to the local vet and cradled the little creature in her arms, hoping for a miracle. But as soon as the vet saw her, her face turned pale, and her next words sent shivers down her spine. "This is not a puppy. It's something much more dangerous, and having it is illegal." Jenna's jaw dropped. Why was the vet suddenly raising his voice? Wasn't he doing the right thing by bringing the puppy? The confusion was reflected on his face, but the vet's patience ran out. "I'm going to call the police," he said. "You won't get away with it." Jenna's heart sank. "Wait!" he shouted as the vet walked away. "What have I done?" The vet closed the door behind him, locking Jenna inside the exam room. He ran to the door, desperately trying to open it, but to no avail. She banged her fists on the door, hoping that someone in the waiting room would raise the alarm. But no one heard her, or worse, no one cared. She was left alone, not knowing what was going to happen to her. Soon after, he heard police sirens stop in front of the veterinary clinic. She heard the thud of officers approaching the examination room, and shortly thereafter, they were standing in front of her. "Miss Sanderson, you have the right to remain silent." But why did the vet call the police? What kind of animal had Jenna taken to the vet? And why was she arrested? The morning started quite exciting. Jenna was refilling her bird feeders when she heard a faint whine coming from the bushes. It wasn't the first time a wild animal had visited his garden, as he lived next to a forest, so he pushed the leaves aside curiously. What he didn't know was that he wouldn't encounter a deer. His jaw dropped when he saw a small animal shivering with cold, its fur soaking wet and its eyes closed. Without hesitation, Jenna ran inside and grabbed a small box and towel to place the animal in. As soon as the animal felt the warmth of the towel, he snuggled up against it and Jenna began to dry him. Suddenly, the animal began to growl at Jenna and even tried to bite her finger while she stroked his fur. Jenna leaned back, shocked by the animal's sudden aggression. She looked at her hand in disbelief, but was relieved to see that it was not scratched. "I didn't really want to get a rabies vaccine anytime soon." He decided that the best thing to do was to take the animal to the vet, thinking that it was a puppy that needed to be taken a look. He drove there, with the puppy next to him curled up in a corner of the box. I had called the vet when I left the house. Jenna was a regular at the clinic. Dr. Thompson had treated rabbits, cats, and even squirrels that had entered Jenna's garden. When she arrived at the clinic, Dr. Thompson was already waiting for her. She had a small margin between her appointments to see the puppy, but it wasn't a long time. "Thank you for having me on such short notice," Jenna said, as she walked through the door. The vet nodded. "No problem, but you owe me a lunch break," he replied jokingly. They headed together to Recognition Room 2, and Jenna placed the puppy on the table. The vet looked at him intently and raised an eyebrow. "Did you say you found it in your garden?" he asked. Jenna answered truthfully, not noticing the questionable tone in Dr. Jenna's voice. "Thompson." "Yes, and it almost bit off my finger," he joked. But Dr. Thompson wasn't smiling. "What's wrong?" Jenna asked worriedly. Dr. Thompson sighed as he stepped back, his face expressionless. "This is illegal. You know that, right?" he asked. Jenna's heart began to race as she shook her head. "What do you mean? He's just a puppy," she replied confused. I had no idea what the vet meant, but I would soon find out. "What do you mean?" Jenna asked, her voice trembling. Dr. Thompson's expression hardened. "This is not a puppy, Jenna. He is a wolf cub, and it's illegal to have one as a pet." He picked up the phone from the wall. "I'm going to call the police," he said firmly. Jenna's mind raced, her heart pounding. "But I didn't know!" he exclaimed. "Please don't do this." But Dr. Thompson had already made up his mind. He dialed the number and Jenna felt helpless. Jenna watched in horror as Dr. Thompson left the room and closed the door behind him. He rushed at the door, banging the doorknob frantically. "Dr. Thompson!" he shouted, banging his fists on the door. Their screams echoed in the empty room. The little wolf cub was whining in the box, oblivious to the chaos. Panic increased when Jenna realized she was trapped. The walls seemed to close, and the silence was deafening. He had to find a way out. Jenna slumped against the door, trying to take in what had just happened. "A wolf cub," he murmured, looking at the small, trembling animal. How could that be true? She had only wanted to help. Questions crowded in his mind. Why was Dr. Thompson so harsh? What would the police do to him? He felt a knot in his stomach. I had to stay calm and think about what to do next. Panic wouldn't help her. Jenna's desperation was growing. He pounded on the door again, this time harder. "Can anyone hear me? Help!" he shouted. He pressed his ear against the door, trying to hear some response from the waiting room. Silence. He hit harder. His fists hurt. "Please, someone come!" he shouted. The wolf cub let out a small howl, reflecting his anguish. Jenna's eyes filled with tears. She had never felt so alone, trapped in a place that should have been safe. The minutes passed, and every second Jenna's fear increased. He screamed over and over again, but no one came. The stillness of the room was suffocating. Jenna's thoughts were stirring. Why didn't anyone come to help her? She felt abandoned. Her hope diminished with each unanswered plea. The reality of her isolation hit her hard. He sank to the ground, hugging his knees. The soft moan of the wolf cub was the only sound that broke the oppressive silence. He had to find a way out. Jenna glanced around the room, looking for a possible way out. His eyes fell on the vent on the wall. Could I pass through there? He wondered aloud, despair permeating his voice. He stacked a chair on the examination table and climbed precariously. He peered into the metal grill, cold against his fingers. The opening seemed large enough. Jenna took a deep breath, hoping this would be her way out. Jenna struggled to sneak through the vent, her shoulders too broad to fit. He grunted in frustration, went back out, and collapsed on the table. "This can't be happening," she murmured, tears of helplessness in her eyes. She felt trapped, both physically and emotionally. The small room seemed to close in on her, and her mind was stirring. There had to be another way. He couldn't give up now, not when the stakes were so high. Suddenly, strange noises came out of the box. Jenna turned her head toward her. The wolf cub made unfamiliar sounds, a mixture of growls and groans. The aggressive noises sent shivers down her spine. I had never heard an animal emit such eerie sounds. The cub's eyes shone with a wild intensity and clicked the air. Jenna's heart was pounding in her chest. He walked away a little, keeping an eye on the fierce little creature. Jenna took a step back, keeping a safe distance from the box. The memory of the puppy's previous aggression was fresh in his mind. I didn't want to be around again. The puppy growled again, showing his small teeth. Jenna shuddered and wrapped her arms around. "I just wanted to help you," he whispered, his voice barely audible. He felt a twinge of sadness mixed with fear. The puppy was dangerous, and she was trapped here with him. The sound of police sirens cut through the silence, growing louder and louder. Jenna's heart sank. She wasn't sure what she had done wrong, but the fear of losing her freedom was overwhelming. He looked up at the door, his mind racing. The sirens were nearby, almost in the clinic. Jenna's breathing quickened. She felt cornered, like a caged animal. "Please, let it be a misunderstanding," he prayed, in a trembling voice. The weight of uncertainty oppressed her. The door slammed open, and the police officers flooded the room with their guns drawn. Jenna opened her eyes in terror. "Don't move!" an officer barked in a firm voice. She froze, her heart pounding so hard she could barely think. The wolf cub cowered in the box, and his grunts turned to moans. The tension in the room was palpable, the air heavy with fear and confusion. Jenna felt like she was in a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. Tears streamed down Jenna's face as she slowly raised her hands. "Please, can I explain?" he sobbed, his voice trembling. "I didn't know it was illegal. I thought he was a puppy in need." Her words gushed out, desperate to make the agents understand. But their faces remained stern, their eyes fixed. Jenna's heart ached with fear and helplessness. She felt the weight of the situation crumbling on her. Ignoring their pleas, the agents acted quickly. One of them grabbed her by the wrists and put the handcuffs tightly on her. Jenna shuddered as she felt the cold metal biting into her skin. "He has the right to remain silent," the officer recited, in a tone devoid of sympathy. Jenna's mind was spinning. This could not be happening. He hadn't done anything wrong, at least not on purpose. The reality of her situation hit her hard, and she felt her legs give out. The officers led Jenna out of the examination room, her heart pounding with fear and confusion. The bright lights of the clinic seemed harder now, and every step resounded loudly in his ears. He looked at the little wolf cub, who was still curled up in the box, and felt a twinge of sadness. How could things have gone so wrong? The officers were holding her firmly and guiding her through the hallways. Jenna's mind was a whirlwind of questions and fear. The clinic's waiting room went silent as police escorted Jenna to the exit. Patients and staff stared, their eyes wide with surprise and curiosity. Jenna bowed her head, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. She felt that everyone judged her and assumed the worst. The road to the police car seemed endless. Every second seemed eternal. When the doors opened, Jenna breathed heavily, bracing herself for what lay ahead. In the back of the police car, Jenna's mind filled with questions and fears. "What have I done?" he thought, tears still streaming down his face. He couldn't comprehend how things had gone so fast. "Will I go to jail?" Uncertainty gnawed at her. Every second seemed like an eternity. His thoughts were a chaotic jumble of panic and desperate hope that there had been some mistake. She felt completely alone and confused. Jenna looked out the window, straining to see the clinic one last time. "I was hoping to see Dr. Thompson or the strange animal that had caused all these problems." The sight of the clinic fading into the distance made his heart ache. "I just wanted to help," she whispered to herself, feeling the weight of incomprehension pressing down on her. He wondered what would become of the puppy now, alone and scared. As they drove away, Jenna realized that there was nothing more to see than the closed doors of the clinic and the worried faces of the people inside. The sense of finality hit her hard. "Everyone thinks I'm a criminal," she thought, with a knot in her stomach. He saw no trace of Dr. Thompson, no indication of what was happening with the wolf cub. The reality of his situation was sinking in and seeming more and more surreal to him. The drive to the police station was eerie in eerie silence, save for Jenna's occasional sobs. The officers in the front seat were speaking quietly, and their words were indistinguishable. Jenna's mind wandered, going over every moment of the day. How had a simple act of kindness become a nightmare? Every bump in the road brought her back to harsh reality. The silence was suffocating, leaving Jenna alone with her spiraling thoughts and growing sense of terror. Jenna's thoughts boiled with confusion and worry as the police car approached the police station. "What are they going to do to me?" he wondered, with increasing anxiety. He thought of his home, of his friends, of his life turned upside down in an instant. The image of the wolf cub's fierce eyes haunted her. "I didn't mean to hurt," she repeated to herself, trying to find comfort in her innocence. But the uncertainty of what awaited him overshadowed everything else. At the police station, Jenna was ushered into an interrogation room where two stern-faced detectives were waiting for her. The room was cold and barren, and the air was fraught with tension. One of the detectives, a tall man with sharp features, motioned for him to sit down. The other, a woman with piercing eyes, was watching her intently. Jenna's heart raced as she took her seat. He felt like he was sinking into a dark abyss, and his fear and confusion only increased. Detectives put in front of him a stack of papers detailing laws on illegal animals. Jenna's eyes scanned the documents. The words mingled in her anxious state. "These are the rules you have broken," the detective said, his voice cold and unwavering. Jenna's hands trembled as she flipped through the pages, overwhelmed. I couldn't believe what was happening. Each paragraph was like a nail in his coffin that sealed his fate. Jenna, bewildered, tried to explain that she had found the animal and that she did not know it was illegal. "I didn't know it was a wolf cub," he said in a trembling voice. "I thought it was a stray puppy that needed help." He looked at the detectives, hoping for a glimmer of understanding. "I called the vet as soon as I found him. He was not trying to break any laws." His words poured out in a desperate plea for mercy. The detectives listened to her, but they didn't seem convinced of her story. The woman leaned forward and narrowed her eyes. "Do you expect us to believe you had no idea?" he asked, with a skeptical tone. The detective nodded. "It's hard to believe you didn't recognize a wolf cub," he added. Jenna's heart sank. I could see the doubt in his eyes. As sincere as she was, they seemed determined to consider her guilty. Jenna's anxiety grew as the interrogation continued, feeling trapped in a nightmare. Every question seemed like a trap, and every answer seemed to get her even more into trouble. He could barely think clearly, his mind clouded with fear and exhaustion. "Please, I'm telling the truth," he repeated, his voice getting weaker and weaker. The detectives exchanged glances without changing their expressions. Jenna felt the walls closing in around her, the oppressive atmosphere of the room making it difficult for her to breathe. Hours passed with more questions and growing frustration for Jenna. Each question seemed like an exam that he did not pass, and his patience was exhausted. "I've told you everything I know," he insisted in a tense voice. Yet the detectives seemed relentless, with unwavering skepticism. Jenna had a headache from the endless interrogations and felt trapped in a cycle of suspicion and doubt. Their hope of resolving this nightmare began to fade, replaced by a deep sense of despair. Every answer he gave seemed to provoke more suspicion in the detectives. "Why didn't he recognize that it was not a dog?" the woman insisted. "You said you dealt with animals before," the man added, in an accusatory tone. Jenna's frustration boiled over. "I didn't know!" he shouted, tears of exasperation in his eyes. "I was just trying to help." But the detectives exchanged doubtful glances, their disbelief palpable. Jenna felt herself sinking even deeper into hopelessness. Suddenly, one of the detectives receives a call and leaves. The room fell into an awkward silence, the air fraught with tension. Jenna watched him leave, her heart pounding. She looked at the remaining detective, who was still scrutinizing her with piercing eyes. The moments dragged on. Every second seemed like an eternity. Jenna's mind churned, wondering what the call could mean. He felt a glimmer of hope, but he quickly suppressed it. Jenna was left alone with the other detective, who stared at her intently. His gaze was like a spotlight, which exposed all his thoughts and emotions. She squirmed under his gaze, trying to keep her composure. "You have to understand the seriousness of this situation," he said, in a low, firm voice. Jenna nodded, too exhausted to answer. The weight of his gaze locked on her, making the room seem even smaller and more suffocating. The tension in the room rose as Jenna waited, unsure of what would happen next. He could hear his own heartbeat, loud and erratic in the silence. The detective's eyes, which did not blink, increased his anxiety. Every minute that passed seemed like an eternity. Uncertainty corroded her. What are they planning? He wondered, his nerves running high. Jenna shifted in her seat, trying to remain calm, but the oppressive atmosphere made it almost impossible to think clearly. When the detective returned, he had new evidence. Surveillance footage of the nature reserve. He put a laptop on the table, and the screen started flickering. Jenna's heart sank when she saw the video with the date and time. "We have found this recording of the night the animal escaped," the detective said, his voice heavy with innuendo. Jenna's eyes widened as she approached, fearing what she might see. His mind stirred, looking for any possible explanation. The footage showed a Jenna-like figure near the reserve's fence the night the animal escaped. The grainy video showed a shadowy figure moving stealthily. "That's not me!" Jenna exclaimed, her voice breaking. She watched in horror as the figure manipulated the fence and allowed the wolf cub to pass through it. The resemblance was uncanny, and he shivered. "I swear, it's not me," he insisted, but his confidence wavered. Jenna was stunned and insisted that it wasn't her, but the resemblance was uncanny. "You have to believe me," she pleaded, tears welling up again. "I was home that night. This is a mistake." The detectives exchanged glances, and their skepticism increased. Jenna's hands trembled as she tried to make sense of it all. "Check my phone records, my messages, whatever," he pleaded. But the images spoke louder than his words, casting a dark shadow of doubt. Doubts began to cloud Jenna's mind as she wondered how this could be happening. He ran over the night in his head, trying to remember all the details. Could he have been near the reserve without realizing it? Had he been set up? The questions tormented her, each more disturbing than the last. Jenna felt that reality was slipping out of her hands. How could he prove his innocence when the evidence seemed so irrefutable? The detective's suspicions were accentuated, further complicating Jenna's situation. "These images place you in the scene," the male detective stated flatly, "and your story doesn't add up." Jenna's heart was pounding. I could see how their patience waned, how they made up their minds. "Please give me a chance to prove that I am telling the truth," he implored. But his expressions were still severe. Jenna felt the walls close again, her options diminished. He was running out of time to clear his name. The detectives decided to investigate further and brought in the director of the nature reserve. Jenna watched as a tall, gray-haired man walked into the room with a serious face. He introduced himself as Mr. Harris. His eyes swept across the room and landed on Jenna. "We need your knowledge," the detective said, showing him the footage. Jenna's heart was pounding. It was his chance to prove his innocence. I hoped the director would see the truth in his words. The director confirmed that a young and very dangerous animal had recently escaped. "Yes, a few nights ago we missed a wolf cub," Mr. Harris said grimly. "It is a serious matter. That animal can be very dangerous if not handled properly." He looked at Jenna. His gaze softened slightly. "I can understand why you'd be scared if you found him," she added. Jenna nodded, feeling a small spark of hope. Perhaps he believed it. He examined Jenna's account and surveillance footage and observed her genuine confusion and fear. She seems genuinely distressed, Mr. Harris observed, looking closely at Jenna. He doesn't look like someone who planned this. Jenna felt a flash of relief. Finally, someone took her into account. The detectives remained silent, watching the director intently. "Tell me again how you found the puppy," he prompted Jenna, his encouraging tone. Jenna recounted her story, hoping it would be enough. The director expressed concern, but did not completely exonerate Jenna. "I think you didn't intend to do harm," Mr. Kelly said, Harris gently. "But it's still a serious situation. The law is clear about the handling of wild animals." He turned to the detectives. "She needs to be questioned thoroughly, but I don't think she's lying." Jenna's relief was tempered by her words. She was not yet free of suspicion, but at least someone was finally listening to her. Detectives continued to question Jenna in search of more answers. "Why was he near the reserve that night?" the female detective asked. Jenna shook her head. "I wasn't there. I don't know who the person in the video is, but it's not me," he insisted. The detective leaned over to her. "Is there anyone who can attest to his whereabouts?" Jenna racked her brains. "I was alone at home," he said quietly. The detectives exchanged glances, with obvious doubts. The director's testimony provided some relief to Jenna, suggesting that she might be innocent. Her words carried weight, and Jenna felt a small glimmer of hope. "I believe it," Mr. Harris had said, in a firm voice. The detectives, while still skeptical, seemed to consider his point of view. Jenna took a deep breath and felt a little weight lifted off her shoulders. But I knew this was far from over. There were still many questions to be answered. There were still unanswered questions about how the animal had ended up in his garden. "How did the wolf cub get to your house?" the detective asked, with a less accusatory but still inquisitive tone. Jenna shook her head, confused. "I have no idea," he replied sincerely. "I just found him there, shivering in the bushes." The detectives exchanged glances. It was a critical piece of the puzzle that they couldn't ignore. Jenna's mind churned, trying to make sense of it all. The vet's stern reaction remained a puzzling element in the case. Why did Dr. Thompson react so forcefully, the detective wondered aloud. Jenna shrugged, still bewildered by the vet's actions. "I don't know. He just freaked out when he saw the puppy," she explained. "He said it was illegal and locked me in the room." The detectives took note of this, recognizing it as another strange detail that needed to be investigated further. Jenna felt a chill of uncertainty. Detectives promised to investigate these inconsistencies, leaving Jenna in limbo. "We will investigate further and get back to you," the detective said. Jenna nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and anxiety. She was grateful to be taken seriously, but she hated the wait. "Can I go?" he asked hesitantly. The detectives exchanged a look. "For now, yes, but stay available," the male detective replied. Jenna walked out of the police station, her mind still spinning on the questions. Jenna's anxiety remained high as she waited for new developments. Every day seemed like an eternity, filled with uncertainty and fear. She couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, that something was lurking out of her sight. Every time the phone rang, his heart raced, waiting for news. He repeated it all in his mind, looking for anything that had been missed. The questions, doubts, and fear of the unknown gnawed at her relentlessly. Detectives later returned with an important revelation about the animal's identity. "Jenna, we have new information," the male detective said, in a softer tone. Jenna's heart raced as she waited for him to continue. "The animal you found is not a wolf cub. It's a young lynx." Jenna's eyes snapped open. A lynx? He had never imagined something like this. The revelation brought him a mixture of relief and confusion. But how did it end up in my garden? He wondered aloud. Jenna found a young lynx, a very dangerous and protected species that had escaped from a nearby nature reserve. The detective explained, "Lynxes are rare and highly protected. This one must have escaped somehow." Jenna nodded, trying to process this new information. "I had no idea," he said in a trembling voice. The detectives shared a look. This discovery added a new level of complexity to the case, making it even more urgent to find out how it had happened. Authorities initially suspected Jenna was involved in the escape due to the rarity of the incident. "We had to consider all possibilities," the detective admitted. "It's not every day that a protected species like this disappears." Jenna felt a twinge of frustration mixed with fear. "I get it," he said quietly, "but I really didn't know." The detectives seemed to soften, realizing the gravity of the situation and the impact on Jenna's life. With new evidence, it became clear that Jenna was just an unfortunate bystander. The detective spoke. "We found additional images and testimonies that support his story. You weren't near the reserve that night." Jenna let out a sigh she didn't know she was holding. "Thank you," she whispered, tears of relief in her eyes. The detectives nodded, acknowledging the emotional toll this had placed on her. The truth finally came to light. The detectives apologized, and the truth about the lynx's escape began to be revealed. "We feel the anguish that this has caused him," the male detective said sincerely. Jenna nodded, thanking the gesture. Apparently, the lynx escaped due to a breach in the security of the reserve. "We are still investigating how it got into his garden." Jenna felt a mixture of relief and lingering anxiety. The nightmare was about to end, but questions remained. The charges against Jenna were dropped, which came as a relief to her. "You can go," the detective said, handing him the release papers. Jenna exhaled deeply, feeling the tension melt away. "Thank you," he said, his voice full of gratitude and weariness. The detective nodded at him. Jenna left the police station, feeling the weight of the ordeal dissipate slightly. She was relieved, but the experience had left a lasting impact on her. Jenna returned home, grateful for her freedom, but deeply shocked by the experience. She entered her house, where the family environment comforted her. He sat in his favorite armchair and tried to assimilate everything that happened. Fear and confusion were still present. But now, I was safe. "I just need some time," he thought, closing his eyes. The tranquility of his home contrasted with the chaos of the last few days and offered him a moment of peace. The lynx was returned safely to the nature reserve, where it belonged. Jenna watched the news and was relieved. "The lynx has been returned safe and sound thanks to the quick action of the local authorities," the reporter announced. Jenna smiled slightly, knowing that the animal was back in its rightful place. He thought of the fierce little creature and hoped that it would thrive in the wild. The reserve had reinforced its security to prevent future leaks. Jenna vowed to be more cautious of wild animals in the future. "I will not bring animals home again without knowing what they are," she said to herself firmly. He made a list of local wildlife resources and contact numbers, prepared for any future incidents. The experience had taught him a valuable lesson about caution and awareness. "Prevention is better than cure," he thought. Jenna now felt more prepared and determined to act responsibly and safely in the face of any encounter with wild animals. The experience changed her life forever and left her with a story she will never forget. Sitting on the porch of her house, Jenna reflected on the last few days. Fear, confusion, and ultimately relief had left a deep imprint on her. "I will never forget it," he murmured, looking out over the quiet garden. She felt stronger, more aware of the world around her. Life had returned to normal, but I knew that I would always carry this story with me. Do you like this touching and surprising story? If so, we invite you to leave us a comment expressing your opinion. If you want to continue enjoying inspiring stories like this one, subscribe to our channel or check out the other videos shown at the bottom of the screen. Thank you for your cooperation.